Hey guys, today we'll dive deep into a bone-chilling case that sheds light on the terrifying consequences of self-entitlement and jealousy. Remember the famous quote by Buddha, "You'll not be punished for your anger. Your anger will punish you." This quote perfectly captures the destructive power of these emotions. Join me as we explore the harrowing tale of Megan Hargan and understand the importance of recognizing and addressing the dangers of self-entitlement and jealousy. So, let me paint the picture for you. We find ourselves in the vibrant city of McLean, Virginia, nestled in the beautiful Fairfax County, just west of Washington, D.C. Now, McLean is no ordinary city. Oh no. It proudly holds the title of the third wealthiest city in the United States. Now, let's zoom in on June 2017. This month, a remarkable woman named Pamela Hargan, a seasoned vice president for a government contractor, inhabited her magnificent $1.3 million house. Pamela had worked hard, and her success was evident in her impressive net worth, estimated to be around a whopping $8 million. Pamela was a loving and generous mother to her three daughters, Megan, Ashley, and Helen. Megan, the eldest at 34 years old, temporarily resided with her mother due to her husband's military service. Ashley, on the other hand, had a separate residence, and remember Helen, the youngest daughter, recently graduated with a double major in mathematics and management science from Southern Methodist University in Dallas. Helen was the apple of her mother's eye. Pamela generously gave her the funds to buy and build a house in Virginia. The plan was for Helen and her boyfriend, Carlos Gutierrez, to move into their dream home once it was completed. Little did they know, tragedy would cast a dark shadow over their plans. Megan, facing financial struggles and unemployment, used her mother's financial statement without permission to qualify for a loan. She then attempted to impersonate her mother and transfer around $420,000 from Pamela's bank to her title company. However, the bank took precautions and called Pamela for confirmation.
Hi, who am I speaking to?
Who am I speaking to?
My name is Jeff with Capital One.
Okay, this is Pamela Hanson Hargan.
Somebody tried to do a wire out of your account for $400 and some odd thousand.
What? I did not do that.
Yes, we attempted to yesterday, and there was a bit of a mix-up, so we would like to do it again now.
Okay.
They need it today.
Pamela denied any knowledge of the transfer and blocked it immediately, leaving Megan with no success or money. On July 14, 2017, a day after the failed money transfer attempt, a tragic incident occurred in Pamela Hargan's home in McLean, Virginia. Pamela, 63, and her daughter Helen, 23, were found shot to death by Fairfax County Police. Initially, it was believed to be a murder-suicide. Helen had called her boyfriend in Dallas around 11 a.m., terrified and crying, claiming that her sister had killed their mother. She mentioned that Megan was downstairs transferring money from her mother's account to hers while her mother was dying on the floor. Despite her boyfriend's advice to leave the house, she initially would tell Carlos not to call the police despite his advice for her to leave the house. But she could handle it, telling him that she was concerned for the safety of Megan's daughter. As the clock struck 1:15, Carlos's phone buzzed with incoming messages from Helen's phone. His heart raced as he read, "Everything is fine. I'm not mad at Megan." But deep down, Carlos couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It became clear that Megan was the puppeteer behind these messages, pulling the strings. Helen's boyfriend made a desperate call to the Virginia authorities. This phone call suggests that Helen was alive for several minutes after Pamela was shot. But he was bounced around so many times, it was as though they were giving him the runaround. He was having difficulty contacting the authorities, mainly because he was in Dallas, trying to report a crime in Virginia. Eventually, the authorities would take his report as credible.
Fairfax County Police and Fire, how may I assist you? Yes, I have an emergency. My girlfriend won't answer the phone, and I'm thinking my girlfriend is in danger. Okay, sir, what I need you to do then is contact your local jurisdiction, file a report with them, and tell them that Fairfax County requires a teletype in order to do a welfare check.
And go to the Hargan's house. They didn't arrive until 3 p.m., and upon getting no response after ringing the bell, they broke down the door and found the bodies. Firstly, Pamela's body was found in the laundry room, where she had been shot twice. It's so eerie that she was lying face down with a blanket over her, almost like she was peacefully sleeping. To make it even more disturbing, her cell phone was on top of the blanket. The pool of blood coming from her head adds to the horror of it all. And then there's Helen, tragically found in her bathroom. The evidence suggests she was sitting on the toilet when she was shot in the head. The fact that she was fully clothed makes you wonder if she was trying to hide in there. It's just so sad. The rifle was found between her legs with a lot of blood coming from her mouth. However, the initial theory of murder-suicide didn't quite add up when authorities took a closer look. The evidence surrounding Helen's phone is quite intriguing. The lack of fingerprints and the smudged screen raise suspicions that someone may have tampered with it to destroy evidence. It's possible that Megan used the phone to text Carlos, which suggests that Helen might have already been deceased when those messages were sent. The absence of Helen's DNA on the rifle itself is undoubtedly suspicious. How could she have shot herself without leaving any fingerprints? And the fact that she was shot at the top of her head, which is unusual for a self-inflicted wound, raises even more questions. The positioning of the rifle should have resulted in blood on it, but the absence of blood only adds to the growing suspicions. During the investigation, authorities discovered that the weapon used was a .22 Ruger rifle, which belonged to Megan's husband. In an interview, Megan informed the police that her mother had allowed her to store the gun in the house until they moved. Megan also mentioned bringing the gun upstairs due to seeing suspicious individuals in the neighborhood. These details certainly add another layer of complexity to the case. So Megan told the police that she left the house with her daughter, Molly, around 1 p.m. There was a heated argument between Helen and her mom. It's hard to believe that Helen, described as the kind of daughter everyone wanted, could have done something terrible. Ashley and Megan even mentioned that Helen had been depressed and talked about suicide. But it's still difficult to imagine her committing such a monstrous act. Initially, it was reported that Helen killed her mother before taking her own life. But then, the investigators found evidence suggesting there might be more to this story. Megan, having gunshot residue on her and her DNA being found on the gun, raises some eyebrows. When the police searched the house, they found a book with Pamela's financial passwords, which they took a picture of to return later to pick up with a warrant. However, when they returned with the warrant, the book was nowhere to be found. Something seems suspicious here. As the investigation went on, Megan admitted to impersonating her mother in an attempt to transfer money from her bank account. Sounds like the investigators had their work cut out, unraveling all these twists and turns. So, the investigators didn't reveal whether Megan, Pamela's older daughter, and Helen's older sister was a suspect for over a year. They did mention that Megan had tried to make fraudulent wire transfers from Pamela's financial account on the day of the murders. After months of investigation, Megan was finally arrested and charged with the murders of her mother and sister in November 2018, which is about 16 months after the gruesome incident. It must have been a long and intense investigation to gather all the evidence and build the case against her. It's sad to hear that money and jealousy may have played a role in this tragic case. According to Pamela's sister, Tammy, she believes that Megan's motive for the murders is related to money and the fact that Pamela had recently bought Helen a house. Tammy thinks Megan was jealous because she and her daughter couldn't afford to leave Pamela's home. Thinking such greed and envy could lead to devastating outcomes is heartbreaking. The road to justice seems to be a long and slow one in this case. Megan's murder trial began in March of 2022, and during the trial, the prosecution highlighted how money was the primary motivation for the murders. They mentioned that Megan was in the process of closing on a house in West Virginia, and that shortly after she shot and killed Pamela, she attempted to transfer money from Pamela's account to her own. It's a complex and heartbreaking situation. Carlos, Helen's boyfriend, testified that he was on the phone with Helen when Pamela's murder happened. Carlos tried to convince Helen to leave the house, but she was worried about leaving Megan's daughter behind. After they hung up, Megan shot and killed Helen. It's truly devastating to think that Megan went to such lengths to make the deaths appear as a murder-suicide, placing the shotgun near Helen. It's clear that there was no motive for Helen to have killed her mother, but Megan had a clear motive. The fact that Megan used her husband's rifle, which she was familiar with, shows a level of planning and familiarity with the weapon. It's chilling to think about. Megan's defense attorneys tried to argue that Pamela and Helen's deaths were a murder-suicide, claiming that Helen was angry at Pamela for disapproving of her relationship with Carlos. But the physical evidence, like the gunshot wound on Helen's head that went down to her neck, didn't support that theory. The defense said Helen used her toes to pull the trigger. The prosecution argued that it would have been next to impossible to do. Ultimately, the jury sided with the prosecution and found Megan guilty. They even recommended 2 life sentences for her. Justice was served. In November 2022, a judge vacated Megan's conviction and ordered a new trial. This decision came after it was revealed that one of the jurors tested out the defense theory by using a rifle. The juror found that Helen couldn't have shot herself in the way the defense argued, as the medical examiner determined that she was shot in the top of the head. The juror shared these findings with the rest of the jury during deliberations. So the defense argued that the jurors' reenactment was misconduct because they were instructed not to do any outside research. That led to a retrial being granted. The retrial started in September 2023, and once again, the prosecution claimed that Megan's motive was money. On the other hand, Megan's defense stuck to their argument that the deaths were a murder-suicide planned by Helen. But despite that, the jury found Megan guilty of 2 counts of murder. She's now facing 2 life sentences. It's interesting that Megan still maintains her innocence. Must be a tricky situation for everyone involved. As we reach the end of this gripping tale, it serves as a sobering reminder of the dangers of self-entitlement. The tragic incident involving Pamela Hargan and her daughter Helen Hargan sheds a light on the devastating consequences that can arise when one's sense of entitlement goes unchecked. It's a stark reminder of the importance of empathy, compassion, the understanding that actions have far-reaching consequences. Let this story serve as a cautionary tale, urging us to reflect on our behaviors. Thank you for joining me on this thought-provoking journey. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Drop a comment. Let us know what you think about Megan Hargan's acts.